Hello, I'm Horace Douty in Lexington, Virginia, and each week I bring you a local history lesson by way of YouTube based on the history lessons that I have written and published in two volumes entitled History Lessons from a Country Church by Horace Douty. I encourage you to subscribe to Horace Douty, D-O-U-T-Y, YouTube, and share these presentations with your family and your friends. Today, the title of the history lesson is Bad Day for Rockbridge. The year 1895 was tough for this local community. Granville Camel, a noble resident in the western part of the county, died. Camel's guidance and commitment in that around his farm was very fortunate and helpful and necessary as he helped build Oxford Church and also the Collierstown Presbyterian Church. On Valentine's Day in 1895, Charles Figgett, highly regarded cashier of the local bank, left town on the afternoon train. Nobody realized at the time that Figgett carried virtually all of the bank's cash with him. A Chicago newspaper bluntly reported about the only thing of value that he did not take was the bank building itself. Depositors were stunned. Every dollar was hard-earned at a time when currency could be exchanged for gold, dollar for dollar. People who had chosen to entrust their cash to the heavy vault were left without anything. The county treasury was stripped. Local government came to a halt. VMI, Virginia Military Institute, was crippled. Professors of Washington and Lee University were left empty-handed. From top to bottom of the financial ladder, almost all of the citizens of Rockbridge County, Virginia, were painfully damaged. All of the churches in the area suffered. Oxford Church had been contemplating the construction of a new manse, pastor's home, the first in the pastor's history, but that dream had to be postponed. It would have to wait. The pastor, Reverend William Bailey, would live at Bolivar Mills another 5 years, serving Woodville Presbyterian Church just outside of town on Union Run, as well as Oxford. That attractive home that was finally built still stands beside Buffalo Creek in a picturesque pastoral setting across the highway from present-day Buffalo Trace. That devastating financial loss was not the only agony. The sturdy country people were suffering emotional trauma as well. At least one suicide was attributed to the bank disaster. Our Scot-Irish ancestors depended on the sacredness of honesty. Children were taught that your word is your bond. When you engage in any business, make sure your associates are God-fearing, active church people. Charles Figgett more than measured up. He met all the requirements with impeccable credentials. A Confederate veteran of rank, he had been General Stonewall Jackson's clerk. When the Bank of Lexington opened in 1874, Figgett was enthusiastically chosen as the primary officer, the cashier. In the following years, he had proven himself, even acting as treasurer of the new Robert E. Lee Mausoleum. He collected all the contributions and paid for the famous incumbent statue of Lee at rest. Figgett helped raise money to place the Stonewall Jackson Monument in the cemetery. Everybody trusted him. They admired him. On the street, they would hand him their cash and trust him to deposit it at his bank and at his own convenience. Figgett was a father figure, devout churchman, served as chair of the building committee that erected the new Robert E. Lee Episcopal Church in Lexington. He was a tireless Christian gentleman, serving as superintendent of the Sunday school for more than 20 years. He was senior warden of the most sophisticated church in Lexington, where General Lee and Superintendent of VMI Francis Smith served with him on the vestry. Respectability cannot reach a level any higher. That Valentine's Day theft shook Rockbridge to her roots. Hundreds of people severed their connections and their commitments to local churches. The mood was ugly. Some of your suffering forefathers silently breathed the prayer, "Thank God at least Figgett was not a Presbyterian." Recriminations ran wild. Some of the hostility turned toward elders of the Lexington Presbyterian Church, because only 3 years earlier, those men had formed the Lexington Development Company, which had boomed and burst under something of a cloud. Scandalous allegations of fraud from that time now resurfaced, with quite a number of people convinced that Figgett's robbery was another conspiracy to line those elders' pockets. Tough but irreverent men of the soil coined a harsh label for those churchmen, quote, "psalm-singing sons of witches." The actual word rhymes with witches. Fortunately, the charges proved groundless. Figgett had taken the elders' money as well. That money was never recovered. Although Figgett did resurface 4 years later, he was found dead in Colorado. There was no trace of the $180,000. Although he had lived there under the alias of Charles Miles, his real name was clearly written in his well-worn prayer book beside his body. By some accounts, the death was a suicide. We do not know. The Lexington Gazette admitted the story reads like fiction, but stark reality made the grandest piece of rascality in the history of our state. Lexington won the unenviable reputation before the world as having produced one of the shrewdest bank robbers, a prince of the profession, a Napoleon of finance. The good news is that banks all over the country were investigated closely. The wreck in Lexington helped tighten the rules, and by the end of 1895, which witnessed the coldest weather in 50 years, our county began to settle back into a fairly normal routine. The people waited for better times. It took a while, but happy times did come again. That is the story of the worst day in Lexington Vineyard. Thank you for being with me. Blessings on you.